So first of all, I have to apologize for being a few minutes late getting here for the recording session
Thank
today.
you.
Well,
because
all right, if you're going to get that way about it, I'm taking the apology back.
If you hadn't raised that issue, if you hadn't stepped up to the plate, by the way, we shouldn't use those kinds of words that's a cultural thing.
You mean because it's a reference to baseball?
Baseball English, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But thank you for stepping up to the plate.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to you.
Right,
so
I know you are.
Understand what that means.
Of a fairly similar culture.
And
as much as I hate to admit
and extending that apology.
Yes.
Because I was about to say, I'm waiting.
You don't have to introduce it. You can just say it. Oops. Your culture's showing.
It is?
It's the reason we're here, I'm pretty sure, right? I mean, in theory, the reason we're
on
here.
Earth?
Yeah, yes. Whoa, man.
Oh, we're getting very spacey.
Here we go. We're getting
but
into
this is a spacey show.
Intergalactic, man.
This episode is a spacey episode because aren't we talking about?
Well, I don't know if I'll have time to talk about space.
We're talking about time.
Oh, man, we're going to time. How do we understand time? Do we understand time?
Well, and as it affects culture. And we got into this discussion because you came in late into the studio today.
Seriously?
And I understand this.
See, I don't think I have to apologize for anything.
You don't? You don't have to apologize for that because I understand it.
I mean, you do. Well,
look, you came in. You came in from Paraguay.
I don't mean that physically.
And you were delayed. Okay.
Well, how did you know I came in from Paraguay? What gave me away? Don't answer that question. Anyway, but speaking of questions, we have a question from a listener who has sent us an email and asked a specific question, which we will get to a little later on.
I'm excited to hear that.
And
question.
Are you?
Yes.
Speaking about feelings, which we're not going to do today. And well, we are going to talk about some areas of the of this continent along here. We're going to talk about like Central America, maybe Mexico. We'll
that's wonderful. They're some of my favorite cultures.
Fun places to go. Good, nice places. Good people.
Rich, deep, complicated.
Yeah.
And wonderful people.
We're going to do that. I think. Why not? We can do whatever we want. The worst thing that's going to happen.
Well,
is
no, we really can't.
Well, no, we can. But I don't know how much time we'll have, so we're going
once again.
Oh, did I do it again? Son of a gun, aren't I clever? So we're going to make time to talk about some time.
How much time do we have?
You've done this podcast before, right?
Does it matter? Can we just let it run out, or do we have to end at a certain time?
We could never stop. We could just go 24/7 for the rest of time immemorial. What does that mean, time immemorial? Do we know? No? No. Okay. Do we care? No, we don't care. So I'm just going to wander along here until I run out of time. And nothing is saving me at all. All right. We'll be back to this right after this. Okay, listen. The way to get hold of us is oopscultureshow@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is oopscultureshow. Whether this is the first episode or the third episode or whatever episode that you've listened to, if you're still listening at this point, I think you might like this. And if you do, you should really subscribe. Because if you subscribe, these things will just show up for you, and you can listen to them whenever you want to. That's the best way to go, really, honestly. I know what I'm talking about. All right, so just subscribe through iTunes or through wherever you get your podcasts from. But do it today, okay? Subscribe. Thank you.
I was about to say, here we are. I get a text before. I'm waiting.
I just want to point out to the listeners that no matter what I actually say, he just goes ahead and does what he was planning on in the first place. Yes, you were just about to say what?
Right. It's the afternoon. We were getting ready for our episode podcast recording.
Yes.
And we had agreed that we would get together in the studio at 1:00.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a text at several minutes after 1:00 saying that you're going to be delayed by about 5 minutes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Mm-hmm. Of course you are.
But it raises the whole issue of there's a cultural piece in this.
Well, there is in this country, at least in this region of this country.
And I have to say that I was really not put out at all. Even though when you walked through the door, I said, "Where have you been? In Paraguay?"
Right. You did. In fact, you actually did say that. In this region, if you are going to be late.
You mean in Paraguay? Or
in this region of Paraguay, yes, because that's what I'm so in tune with. If you're going to be late, you would be expected to communicate with people to say you're going to be late.
Not in Paraguay. No,
not in Paraguay.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, it's always a good
But we're
thing
actually not in Paraguay. I'm not sure if you understand that, and I'm getting a little scared about that.
Me right now.
You.
Yes, we're in Connecticut.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They do look not similar at all, but fine.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's always a good idea, no matter where you are, if you're going to be late, to explain why you're going to be late.
Right. That was my point here.
But, okay, fine. Then don't apologize.
Well, then the heck with it. I'm taking it back.
But it's like people who are, you have an appointment with somebody at the restaurant, and let's say it's for a specific time, and they don't show up there late. Now, in cultures where being on time really matters, and we interculturals have a term for that. We call those cultures monochronic, but it doesn't matter. Where it really matters, where the clock really defines what we do.
Dictates what you're doing in a lot of cases.
Right. So if you're going to say, I'll be at the restaurant at a certain time, and you actually are late by 5 or 10 minutes, that could be a serious thing.
Right.
And most people will sit and wait. But in cultures where time is much more flexible, the term for that is polychronic, where time is in the background. We know it exists, but it doesn't define what and when we do things.
Right.
Then in those cultures, if you are 5 or 10 minutes late, and you're waiting for somebody who's 5 or 10 minutes late, you don't just sit there and wait with your hands folded on the table. You have a drink or, a little nibble or something while you're waiting, because it's perfectly acceptable for the other person to be a few minutes late.
Okay. Polychronic. I think I dated her in high school. She worked in the library.
Yeah, I dated her sister Mona, which is what I got after dating her.
Definitely more information than we needed. Definitely. You know what was annoying about her? She was never on time. She was always late. So
Polly or her sister?
Polly.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah. Her sister was annoyingly early.
Always on time.
Oh, my goodness.
And it could be very annoying if you're early too, right?
Yeah.
Particularly for the polychronic cultures who feel like it's perfectly fine to show up late.
Well, I can see how this would cause, almost everyone has experienced some version of this in their, I'm going to say their life, but in many parts of their lives. So that you're waiting for people and they said they were going to be there. You haven't heard anything and they're not there. And you run into whether it's work or pleasure, you run into those situations where you start thinking, should I stay? Should I go?
Should I stay? Should I go?
Right. Hello, legal?
Ding, licensing.
So I think people can relate to it. And all of us are probably going to look at it as what I do is right. And what other people do, they should know better.
It's one of those areas in culture, though, that is so frustrating. It probably makes itself visible almost immediately when you cross cultures. That every culture's got a different sense of time.
Right.
And some of them are really extremely different. Where time can be so flexible. If I show up an hour late, or if I don't show up at all and don't even call and let you know that I'm not coming,
right,
that's still okay.
Yeah.
And then there are these other cultures where if you show up 5 minutes late, it's already a major faux pas and a big problem.
And almost to the degree of if you're on time, you're 5 minutes late.
That's right.
Especially when you start talking about business meetings and gatherings like that.
Yeah. So if you have a business meeting, particularly, if you do this virtually, if you have a business meeting, let's say, with somebody in Zurich, Switzerland, which is a very high monochronic culture. This time is critical. Time
in Switzerland,
is important.
Where they make all those clocks.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, these iconic symbols aren't there for no reason.
Right.
So clocks are important here. And we're going to organize ourselves. We're going to start the meeting on time. We're going to end the meeting as scheduled. If we don't talk about everything that we were supposed to talk about, by the time we have scheduled the end of the meeting, that means we were disorganized. We didn't plan well enough ahead, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to finish everything on the agenda within that prescribed period of time. But then if the same meeting, you've got somebody from Paraguay or Brazil or Indonesia or Mexico, these are polychronic cultures. So these folks may show up on time, but they also may be a few minutes late or more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is going to affect how we schedule things, right?
Sure.
And, I think we've said this in some of the podcasts in the past. The bad news about culture is that you're not going to change them.
Right.
And if you go out there thinking that you're going to change them, you're going to spend a lot of your energy in the wrong place.
Sure.
Right? People will change if they choose to change. So you have to go with a knowledge of how they're going to behave around this issue and plan for it.
Yeah.
And come up with a strategy.
Well,
Dean, just to interrupt, sorry.
This is Torin.
Hi, there's a listener.
I think it's
question,
Torin.
Is this Torin?
I think I'm Torin.
Actually, he's in the studio with us again today.
Hello.
Yeah.
I'm just interrupting because we have a listener question that's related directly to what you're just
Is the listener in the studio with us also?
Yes, they're over at
Are they disguised as equipment over there in the corner?
Unless they're hiding very well.
Yes.
This came to us via email a couple of days ago. It says, "Hi, Dean and Tom. In my office in the U.S., we expect everyone to come to meetings on time, and typically earlier is better. Some colleagues and I are heading to Mexico next week for a week of meetings, and I hear that expectations around timeliness are different there. First, is that correct? Second, if some of my colleagues might get frustrated around people being late, what can I do to keep everybody calm and happy?"
Well, first question I always come up with when we get these kinds of emails is, why are you going to Mexico?
So you're the guy who's promoting this cultural stuff, right?
No, it's important to know why you're going.
Oh, I see. You want just explanation.
Yeah, because that's helpful in terms of my answer. But in the absence
is this trying
of that,
to educate the listeners out there that if they do write in, a little more information sometimes can be quite helpful.
More information is always better than less.
So we got a week of meetings. That's all.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Fine.
So that's and also just so you can be annoying. Go ahead.
In the absence of any other kind of information, like where in Mexico, which is important because, like many cultures, the behavior in Mexico City and DF is very different from the behavior, let's say, down in the Yucatan or up in Chihuahua or Monterrey. So Mexico is pretty diverse. But in general, yes, we do have an issue here. And U.S. Americans, I think, are challenged by this issue. By 3:00, some will arrive on time, some might be delayed. You've got to be able to or be flexible in your schedule to that reality.
Okay.
Which means you have to evaluate, look, do we start without certain people or do we wait for them? And again, Mexico is also a more hierarchically oriented culture. So typically, until the senior people do show up, you don't start. You wait. And because if they show up later and you've already started, that already is a faux pas because it's causing a loss of face to them, that you started without them. They're the seniors and the decision makers, and you didn't wait for them. Depending on the situation, the circumstances, they may in fact actually be, I've seen this in negotiations where they intentionally are delayed just to cause a certain level of tension.
Sure.
Right. I'm not predicting that that's going to happen, but that kind of behavior is possible in these kinds of situations. So you've got to remain flexible to this reality, and you can't get upset, right? I mean, I always say, come with a book, come with work, be prepared to do something else at the time that you're having to quote unquote wait.
So you can use the time in the best way you want to use it if you end up having to wait. So you're not feeling so much that you're being taken advantage of, or this isn't going the way it should or they're being impolite to you. You can overcome that.
I think unless you have information that this is some sort of negotiation ploy,
right,
or that they truly have a reason to be playing this kind of a game with you, I would never assume that.
Right.
The way these cultures work, the country and the schedule and the daily plan of things just gets backed up by the afternoon, and that's okay because everybody's getting backed up.
Yeah,
and so everyone's schedule is changing. So if you can't make the 3:00 until 3:30, maybe you call, maybe you don't.
Okay.
Because if you show up at 3:30, everybody knows, well, that's okay. That's just the way things have gone. And if you're in a big city like Mexico City, traffic is always a massive problem.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about a city of over 12 million people.
Right.
Getting around is a
an
critical
old city
problem.
of 12 million people.
Yes, it's sitting in the top of an old ancient volcano.
Right.
So every now and then the ground shakes too. Right. So
both figuratively and literally.
Yes. So people know that things are going to always be delayed.
Okay, so if I'm this person who wrote in the email, and I'm going to be going to these business meetings in Mexico. Let's assume Mexico City for now, and I'm doing that. I should operate on time.
You should always operate on time
and assume that you may encounter some of this, but not act like, oh, I can show up late then.
It's your responsibility to control your frustration because chances are they're not doing this intentionally with you, and you'll only look like a jerk if you get upset about it.
Sure, but I don't want to show up late and then have them there waiting for me.
No, that would be wrong.
Right. Even though it's this kind of thing, what you're not saying, I believe, and I'm putting words in your mouth, which is always a disgusting thing. But if I don't want to say, but it's Mexico, you should be okay with this, that I'm 20 minutes late.
No, you shouldn't be 20 minutes late unless you've got some reason to.
Unless it happens, right?
Yeah, right. And when you are late, you should call or text or let somebody know. That's just the right thing to do.
Yeah. Okay, good. I know that back in Mexico, when my wife and I were headed out to a restaurant one night, and you know Leslie well over the years, and
not as well as you do.
We're going to assume that, right? Yeah, and okay, so we're going out. We've made a reservation, and she's, this is what constantly it's like this. She's telling me, hurry up, you're late, because if anybody's going to be late, it's going to be me.
My impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you do know her better than I do.
I'll correct you if you want.
But it's my impression that Leslie is more comfortable in a monochronic environment.
Absolutely. She's the one who will be there before she's due. She will get there ahead of time. Right. Always.
She's on time, and being on time is important to her. It makes her comfortable.
Absolutely.
And when things don't go as scheduled or anticipated,
she's unsettled.
Right.
Yes. I'm not bad at time like that in using it, but I don't feel the same way.
So you're somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
So we get a little conflict out of that, and that's just within the two of us, much less multicultural situations. But in this multicultural situation, we were going out to a reservation, and we had it at a specific time. So she was antsy that we get out of the hotel room and get over there. And so we basically did. We showed up pretty much on the time that was scheduled. And I went up and told the person there that we were there for the reservation. And they weren't even really sure what the reservation was, or and they weren't worried about it. It wasn't a point of concern. And I had already said to her along these lines, these cultural lines, that I don't think they're going to be too concerned about everything being right on time. And we waited around. We were, and technically we were on time. And I think we waited around about a half an hour. And then we were seated, and everybody was very, very pleasant. There were no real problems. I don't even know if there was a problem with it not having a seat or anything. But this is how it all played out. And it was as a matter of, you're either going to, go with it, ride with it, and enjoy yourself, or you're going to get upset about something you have absolutely no control over.
No control.
Yeah.
Well, you have some control.
So I left. I turned over the table and walked out.
You left her there.
Yeah.
She sat there. You left her.
I
You
walked
said,
out.
"Have a good night. I'll see you later."
I broke some furniture on the way.
You might enjoy a tequila, but I'll be in the bar down the street.
I'll be done. Oh, yeah, you bet. Just kidding.
Well, there's so much
Sort
in
of,
that,
there are
and
pictures.
there's a lot of morals in that, in a way.
Are
in
there?
a way. Yeah.
Okay.
In the sense that it's all in the expectation and the preparation,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you can ahead of time, for example, confirm,
Yes.
and this is true for the business meeting or the dinner reservation, confirm who's going to be there, what time are we scheduled. Well, one of the big mistakes that monochronics, again, let's say U.S. people going into Mexico for business, make is that they're sitting in their office back in Boston, and a month ahead of time they make this appointment, and because it's on the calendar, they assume that they're going to show up and that appointment is still going to be valid.
Sure.
Right. And they get there and nobody knows about the appointment. Oh, really? It's because you didn't confirm it, because as you approached it, you didn't check in. Things change.
Yeah.
And we all know that things change, but in polychronic environments like Mexico, the effect of change on the calendar is immediate.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't assume that just because you made an appointment a month ago from your desk in Boston, that's going to still be valid unless you've confirmed it more than once as you approach the date.
Okay.
And you can do the same thing with your dinner reservation at the restaurant.
Yeah.
But recognize also that if some important person walks into that restaurant 10 minutes before you, and they've only got your table to give them, they're going to get that table. Mm-hmm. Because they're important. And it's much more important to do things according to hierarchy, relationships, and obligations, than it is to do things because somebody's got their name on a schedule.
Okay. To get back to the person who emailed, was so nice to email us with this, and
with very little information, though. I mean,
we don't even actually really
we don't
like
know
this
where.
I
person.
wanted the email to be shorter, though.
We don't know where this person.
I do. I want it shorter with more information.
I see.
Yeah.
That
We
makes
don't know
perfect
Few
sense.
words correctly.
We don't know where in Mexico this person's going. We don't know.
We don't know
who they're
much.
meeting.
We don't know what they're doing when they get there. We don't even know if it's a male or a
very
female.
specific words.
Right.
We don't know their status. Are they meeting with people they report to, or are they meeting the team who reports to them?
What, is this agricultural?
Is it vegetable or mineral?
We don't. Is it bigger than a bread box?
Let's
We have
ask the
no
Pirates of
idea.
Penzance.
And does anyone know what a bread box is anymore?
This is right what you want.
It's just
So what are we saying to this person?
I don't have any idea at this stage. I'm saying, boy, were you stupid to write us an email.
If you thought we could clarify things,
Hold on. I'm going to break some furniture. Give me a second here.
wait, I'm going to go have a tequila first.
All right.
Thank you very much for writing in, by the way. I think
Yes.
it was very brave.
Yeah.
But,
And you'll never do it again.
but if,
So write in, folks, so that we can rip the hell out of you. And we appreciate that.
but let me know if you've got a pre-existing relationship with this
Pre-existing condition or
person.
something.
Pre-existing condition.
We're going
Because
medical on this.
Because we won't insure it.
Right. That's right. Oh, that's for
We
sure.
won't insure the outcome. No, but if you have a relationship, then that's going to change the nature of how you're going to behave with each other. But if you go down there and you don't have a relationship, oftentimes U.S. Americans go down and they say, but that's okay. Business is business.
Right, right.
So let's just sit down, and your Mexican colleague is going to say, okay, meet me at the restaurant.
Yeah.
And at 8 o'clock, and we'll get to know each other. That's what's going on in his mind.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know you.
Right.
In the U.S. American's mind, it's like, oh, well, my company's now working with Jorge Gonzalez.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we have a reason to work together,
Mhm.
I'm going to get on a plane and get down there. We're going to talk about the terms of the nature of whatever it is we do.
Right.
No, Jorge wants to spend time getting to know you first.
Yeah.
Even though he understands that he has an obligation to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start talking about the deal and the terms and the nature of the work and the problems that you have to address, and you're doing this at the meal, unless he has brought this up first, you're making a big mistake. Right? Don't talk about that stuff.
Right.
Let the time go. Let that clock tick away. Talk about things you're meeting him for the first time.
Yeah.
Talk about things that are similar in your lives. Talk about your family. Always talk about your family.
Family's big.
I don't go to Mexico or Latin America without pictures of my family. We take them out and we put them on the table. And once I learn about their family and their kids and their grandkids, then we ask about them.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing you talk about.
Yeah.
And how's the football team doing? And how's the weather? And if there are any major events that have gone on, how's the volcano behaving? You know, are you okay?
Yeah.
This is the nature of the discussion over the meal.
Yeah.
And if you've never met before, you'll also talk a little bit about who you are, like what you've done professionally, the current position you have vis-a-vis the position you had before that, and what you've done in your life professionally, so that he gets a chance to know you.
Sure.
And you should be doing the same with him. And you're not talking about business.
Right.
Right? And then at the end of the meal, when the coffee comes out, or maybe, if you're lucky, the tequila.
Yeah, yeah.
Then he might ask you some questions about the actual nature of the work that you're doing together.
Right.
And that's a wonderful sign.
Yes.
Right? Don't push that. Don't look for that to happen right at the beginning. So you've got to take all that time. Right. And I would say a lot of U.S. Americans say, oh, it's just a waste of time. You sit around, you just, all small talk.
Yeah.
No, this is what's going to make the work happen.
That's great advice, and I think incredibly hard for most people from this country to deal with and understand and believe that that's the way. And in fact, I have a real story of a friend of mine who experienced an extreme version of that. And I'm going to tell it to you right after we come back from this.
I can't wait.
While listening to this, you may think, hey, I wonder, well, if you have a question like that and want to ask us, there's a couple ways you can do it. One would be through email, which is oopscultureshow@gmail.com. That's OOPS cultureshow@gmail.com. And then there's also our handle on Twitter, which is Oops Culture Show. That's OOPS Culture Show. I know. It's not original, but it works. Okay?
My breath has been baited all this time.
I know, and I meant to talk to you about that because I don't know why you've been eating worms. That's really disgusting. I'm sure there's a cultural aspect of that.
Oh, there's a lot.
Is there? Yeah. Well, okay. But hold that thought and anything else you'd like. But for now, I've got this friend of mine who was the president of this is a major company, internationally known. And he was the president of the Americas for that company. And from the U.S. He's a native American. And
U.S. American.
U.S. American, yeah, sorry. And so he was traveling they were having a difficulty with sales in Mexico. And the gentleman who was the chief client that they did business with in Mexico was the head of that, had become good friends with him and his family. They'd been to conferences and different things like that, and they met and they talked, and so they knew each other, and they had also met a few times in the past. They had a representative who was a salesperson there, and so far in this business year, they had not made any sales at all to this particular company.
Zero sales.
Zero. So that was a concern. So he decided, because he had to fly to South America, he would make a stopover, and he was going to arrive late morning, and then he would go see this gentleman at his office, and they would talk for about 2 hours, and then he'd head back out to the airport and complete his journey to South America.
That's a lot of time for a U.S. American to, well, I'll give you 2 hours to make this deal.
Yes, yes. But the good news, now, he had taken cultural training, and he was aware of what he had been told, which was what you had just talked about, exactly what you had just talked about. So, but he's concerned. This was a major, major client for them, and he doesn't know what's really going on. So he goes to meet him, and it's hello, and there's a lot of talk, and not necessarily dissimilar in the very beginning, but he, as he described it, he is dying to just say, what's going on? What's wrong? What can we do? Any of those types of things that we would typically do if you were going to do a meeting in New York.
Right. What's the problem? I don't see any sales.
Absolutely.
From
You're going to get there pretty quickly, maybe not immediately, but very quickly but he doesn't, because he's been told exactly what you just said a few minutes ago before the break about having patience with that. Talk about the family. And they have already knew about the family. So there's a lot to talk about and explain, and what was happening. Is so-and-so going to college? Yes. And so on. And meanwhile, he said this thing is just getting worse and worse as he sits
He's
there.
getting a migraine.
Oh, it's like exploding out of his forehead.
Another explosion.
Yeah, another explosion as last episode. We had, but he said sitting on his shoulder is this little cartoon angel kind of thing going, no, don't you do that. You just keep going with the family and the friends and the food and talking about those things. They're in his office too. They're not having dinner or lunch or anything like that. They may have had a few things to snack on, but that's about it. And he's sitting there. And meanwhile, now he's trying not to look at his watch.
And he also knows he has a flight to catch.
He has a flight, and that's been made clear. So that there's a deadline here. And so he's moving closer to that and closer to that. Nothing. It's not even, they're not even close to
I'm getting so nervous just for him
Absolutely.
Listening to the story.
And it goes, and now he's about 45 minutes to having to leave. Still nothing. And he's looking for small little gaps where he could jump in. Now we're at a half an hour. Still nothing. And now he's realizing he's going to have to start his exit like at 15 minutes before his actually planned exit, because it's also a social thing just to leave the office.
Oh yeah, you got to give it a little time.
Yes. So but now he's come up to that, and maybe I'll start it a little bit earlier, because maybe that will make the talk change. So he does, and he starts to say, well, yes, I'm headed to South America, and I've got to get back to the airport so that I can get to, yes. And they stand and they start moving, and he's thinking, I don't know what to do. This is incredibly frustrating, and I feel like an idiot if I can't come down here. I'm the person running this whole hemisphere. I can't come down here and then walk away going, I don't know what's going on. So, but he says, still on his shoulder is a little cartoon angel going, no. And so he's trusting it, and he's moving out. They get to the front of the office, and he's standing there, and the gentleman's secretary is sitting there, and who my friend also knows, and they have a little conversation there. And then it's basically they're shaking hands and getting ready to, give my regards to, and going through the family members. And he's heading out the door. He says, oh, hang on, I do have something for you. And he's thinking, okay. And he says, he turns to his secretary and he says, get that reading material I had for him. And she goes, oh, yes. And so she leaves for a moment, comes back with an envelope. And he says, I knew you had a trip ahead of you. Explained that before. So I just thought you would enjoy reading this on your flight. He said, but don't open it until you get on your flight. You'll enjoy it on the flight. And he said, fine. And they separated. And he got into the taxi, and he headed to the airport. And he is almost to the airport. And meanwhile, of course, he's reliving this entire thing over and over and over again in his head, figuring out what he could have done to actually been successful in any form, because he's been a total failure. And he thinks, well, I don't have to pay attention to any angels on my shoulder now. I'll open up the envelope and see what he gave me to read, at least, even though he told me to not do it until the airplane. And he opens it up, and it's the largest order they've ever given to his company.
Sure. I mean, he knew.
True story. This is a true story.
Right. The Mexican associate knew why he was coming down there. Mm-hmm. He knew that they had no sales.
Right.
I'm sure if he was intent on maintaining the relationship, and if he was happy with the service that he was getting, then he was going to give him an order right then and there. Yep. But they didn't have to talk about that.
Right.
They had much more important things to talk about.
And they didn't.
That's right. Right.
And as he said, not even anything that could have tripped me over to changing the conversation in that direction. I wasn't even given that.
That's a beautiful story, and that's the way it goes. It's
very true. It's an actual story. Mm-hmm. That is not even exaggerated at all.
Yeah. You know, when we were talking about time, I was thinking, here he was having to rush to the airport.
Yes.
And he's getting nervous because in his head that clock is ticking.
Yeah.
But in his Mexican colleague's head, that wasn't necessarily the case. Right. And he was much more concerned about the relationship than about time.
Yeah.
And that's the mantra for monochronics. Mm-hmm. You got to be concerned about the relationship and not the time. Mm-hmm. And by the way, getting to the airport in Mexico City is no mean feat, because it's...
With the traffic, like you were talking before, absolutely.
Almost any time, you know.
Sure.
And you've got your choice. If you have a limo driver, that's great. If you don't, you got taxis. If you don't get in a taxi, you can get one of the little Volkswagen things where, you know, it fits 15 people. It's like a night at the opera. and everybody...
It's like we're going to Woodstock.
Yes, and it just bounces down the street and somehow miraculously gets you to the airport. Hopefully on time... If it loses a tire or a muffler along the way, it doesn't matter.
So here's a quick question on this. So we were in Mexico, and you go to the airport, and I know this is going to really vary on airports because I've been in some of the smaller airport in a smaller airport in Mexico, and it's certainly can be a real cultural experience. But the plane system around the world basically runs.
Airplane, you mean?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, not PLAN or
just that plane system.
Just a plane system.
You see, the plane system? Words are getting us confused.
This is getting right?
An aeroplane.
Yes, this is a
a plane.
Yeah. I think as a prop plane, wasn't that that I just did?
As opposed to an unplane plane,
right.
Or special
not a plane. It's a quite exotic plane.
You could have a special plane.
It could be very special,
but you can't have a plane.
No.
I won't fly on a plane.
On a plane over the plains.
What was your question?
I have really no idea. I honestly don't have a clue. No, I just wanted. I do actually. Okay. So do the times of landings, takeoffs, those kind of things get impacted by the culture it flies into?
Yeah, it does. But you know, you're talking about typically internet.
I didn't ask for an explanation. I just wanted yes or no.
Okay. Yes.
Moving on.
By the way,
since we are, as I said in the beginning,
I'm completely changing the subject. Because I meant to mention this before, but I either forgot or I was interrupted. I probably the latter.
Or edited because it really wasn't very interesting. Go ahead.
Since we're talking about Mexico, so that's all I'm saying.
Oh, good. Well, we're done. Thank God you finally stopped.
And but before I finish, all this talk of time about being on time.
Yes, it's on our side, by the way.
Not anymore, Tom.
Oh, well, okay, we're done now. Now I definitely need the tequila.
Now it's depressing.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for dragging it into that. Yeah.
For all this talk of time.
Yes.
Right. And how to manage, a business situation. Mm-hmm. Arrive on time, but be ready to wait. That may be the situation you're facing. It changes with social situations.
Okay.
So if you're invited, let's say Jorge Garcia invites me into his home for a dinner.
Yeah.
Well, that's a wonderful thing. That means he wants this relationship. He's inviting me into his family. First of all, you have to go. This is a major honor, really. And you're breaking through that wall. You're getting to know each other. Right. He wants a friendship. Okay. So he invites you to dinner at 8:00. When do you arrive?
No one said there was a quiz. When,
with me, there is always.
Well, let's see. I'm going to guess that if they invite you at 8, you should arrive at 8.
In Mexico?
Yes.
They'll still be preparing for dinner.
Okay.
They may be getting out of the shower.
So it's reflecting that's not a real time. It's very soft, and
Very
you should
soft.
give it some flexibility.
Very polychronic.
So you shouldn't show up saying, look, normally we would show up at 8, like I just said.
In a social situation, you must be late.
Okay.
Or else you will be greeting them. They'll be putting on their bathrobes to answer the door.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So at least a half hour or 45 minutes.
Okay.
At least. Unless it's made clear to you that we're doing this American time.
Okay.
And if you show at in 45 minutes and they are ready waiting for you, that's okay. You haven't delayed them.
Right.
It's not a mistake.
So people showing up a little later on even than you show up, those people aren't like, you're late for this. And when do we get to a point where they're actually, why didn't you show up earlier?
I would say after 1 hour.
About an hour. Okay.
After 1 hour, then you are going to be a little bit late.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That's when you should call and say you're still delayed XYZ, but it'd be perfectly fine.
Right.
Be
right.
perfectly understandable.
They'll be okay with it.
Yeah.
It's just you got to do something to make sure they know.
Daily schedules in these cultures are very different, right?
Right.
You were invited for dinner at 8, but you're not going to sit down until 9:30. When you get to the home, you're going to have appetizers and drinks.
Yeah.
The meal won't start until 9 or 9:30.
Right.
If you were going to a restaurant, you can be invited for dinner at 10:00, but they might say, let's meet at the restaurant at 8:00. But they may not actually sit down and be prepared for a meal until everybody shows up, which might not be until 10:00.
Right. So, okay. Now, I know we've said this in other podcasts, but I think it's necessary. I believe it's necessary to bring this up. If I'm in this situation,
what are you bringing up?
Well,
the
do you really want
tequila
to know
from last
Do you
night.
really want to, yeah. If I'm in this situation and I'm confused, I'm not sure what the heck is going on, can I ask? Can I say, if you've invited us over at 8 and I don't want to do anything wrong, when should I show up? Is it okay at 8:30? What should I do? Or is that a problem?
this is one of these situations where you're asking a question that is providing the answer that they must give, which is, oh, of course, come at your convenience. Come at any time that's comfortable for you.
Okay, so we've gained nothing.
You're not going to get an answer.
Right. Okay. So what do I do in that situation if I'm confused? I opt then, as
I've
you're
just
saying, to be
explained the
later.
situation to you, so you should not be confused. You show up a half hour to 45
Okay,
minutes
I need
later.
furniture. I have to break furniture. Wow. All right.
Hopefully there's limited for.
All right, I'm taking a break here because I need tequila bad, really bad, or badly. Is it? Well, we won't go there.
Oh, we have to talk about
Oh,
grammar.
God. We'll be back with the grammar section
No.
right after this. Probably not. Got any questions for us? Well, if you do, there's a couple of ways to get hold of us. First of all, on email. Our email address is oopscultureshow@gmail.com. And our handle on Twitter is oopscultureshow. Pretty clever, huh? So talk to us. And now for the grammar section. Okay, it's over. And
That was fast.
you can feel the air being sucked out of the
But
room.
grammar is an important aspect
Is
of
it?
culture. Yes,
Good.
you
Let's
get
talk about that some other day.
some other time.
Wow, I thought the tequila would help, and it didn't. That's sad.
I want to say one other thing about the time thing in Mexico.
One other thing? Okay, you have time for one other thing.
Well, if you cared more about our relationship than the clock.
Is this?
Then...
Well, take that any way you'd like. So, all right. You were going to say one more thing about time.
Oh, and Mexico. And here's the fun part.
Good. Thank goodness we got to the fun part. Wake up. Wake them all up out there. All right. So then, because we got to it, we're about a week and a half into this podcast, and we decided to make it fun and entertaining.
I had to do something once you raised grammar.
Oh no.
Oh. All right. We're all waiting. Now we all have bated breath, which is probably from the worm in the tequila. But go ahead.
Oh, by the way, it's in the mezcal. It's not in the tequila.
Well, it was in my tequila, so what's that telling me?
Well, usually it's in the mezcal.
Okay.
Which is a different liquor. It's made from a different plant.
Well, we had a roll going there, and you kind of
I told you this was the fun part. That was it.
Oh, no.
Have you eaten the worm, by the way?
Okay. Wow, it was really going to a dark place there for a second. But I'm just going to move quickly through that.
As the worm
actually,
does through you.
But not,
right?
Not yet, but we're getting there. As is everyone. Ooh, heavy. Time is on my ding.
So
here's
here's the fun
is
part.
this going anywhere?
Here's the fun part.
Really kind of spinning around.
You can look at any country, any culture, and there's information out that will tell you the degree to which you can expect monochronic behavior or polychronic behavior.
Okay.
Right? In all of its various forms.
I see.
And you can make some general statements about major world regions.
Right.
But once you start to do that, these regions are so big, you got to understand that within those regions, there are also major exceptions.
Certainly.
Right? So one of the things that we can distinguish is north of the Alps and south of the Alps.
Mm-hmm.
Big, generalization. North of the Alps is more monochronic. South of the Alps is more polychronic.
Mm-hmm.
History has shown us that that's how the Americas developed as well. North of the Rio Grande, it's more monochronic. South of the Rio Grande, it's more polychronic.
Mm-hmm.
And you go to the history. It was Puritans from Northern Europe who came across to the North America, and it was conquistadors and descubradores from Southern Europe that came to south of the Rio Grande. Right? Okay.
Yep.
So generally speaking, you have these two divisions of time.
Mm-hmm. We're basically looking at the northern hemisphere right now.
Well, I'm talking about all of the Americas.
Right. But once we get farther down, then we start to change again to some degree.
Well, that's it. And that's my point. Thank you. Yeah. In other words, not every culture is going to be as polychronic as some of the descriptions we talked about, let's say in Mexico.
Right.
Right. Brazil is considerably polychronic, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you get down to the southern cone, Argentina and Chile.
Right.
Much more monochronic.
Yeah.
For various reasons. Again, it goes to history.
We're doing geography and temperatures and weather and all of those
and
factors
ethnic
that come into
groups.
Play. And ethnic groups.
Argentinians are basically Italians who speak Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
Not to oversimplify too much, but in Chile, we had a lot of influence of Swiss and German.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And we have quite mountainous regions in there.
Yes, but in general, right?
Yeah.
The whole area south of the Rio Grande is going to be much more polychronic
mm-hmm.
than north of the Rio Grande.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Dean, would you say that's mostly because these are hotter climates?
Well, I don't think that's necessarily.
Not necessarily.
I mean, probably climate. I can't dismiss that as an influence, but I don't think it is the significant influence. I think history, the story of the ethnic groups, and the religion, and the approach to daily life that religion imposes, I think was.
But that being said, there is going. I mean, you can make the argument, like in Mexico, because of the weather, and you get into the summer months, and it's so stifling hot in many areas that they established the siesta.
That's true, and agricultural traditions,
yes.
and cultures that are rooted more in agriculture typically follow a much more polychronic way of life.
Well, I would think time would when you don't have distinct seasons, such as you get when you get farther north or farther south, you are more likely, would seem, you are more likely to approach today with a different outlook because tomorrow is an opportunity again, as opposed because you're not looking at, look, it's going to turn cold and you won't have that opportunity. You're running out of it.
There's this element also of control.
Yeah.
If you believe that you can control time, then you're really believing that you can control destiny, that what you do is, what tomorrow is a function of what you do today.
Yeah.
That's very different from an agricultural perspective. Because if you're in agriculture, as the human race was for 99% of its activity up until the last 100
Fairly
years.
recently,
right? You're at the mercy of the sun, the moon, the stars, the weather.
Right.
And so you can do all that you can, and the frost might still come.
Still get you.
Right.
Yeah.
And the locusts might still arrive. So you have to be flexible. And the belief, therefore, is less that I'm in control of what happens tomorrow, but more I need to be flexible around that and just look at it as an opportunity to start again. So that leads to what is often referred to as the mañana syndrome.
Yes.
If we don't finish it today, we always have tomorrow. And mañana, mañana, mañana. Right. Or a version of that. Which clearly
would show that at that point time has a whole different feel to
it. Or in the Middle East, the idea of bukra. Bukra is the Arabic word for tomorrow. But it doesn't mean if today is Monday that I'm talking about Tuesday. Just the way mañana, if today is Monday, doesn't mean I'm talking about Tuesday.
Right.
In both cases, mañana or bukra means any day after
it's
today.
Almost later.
Sometime in the future.
It's like later.
Sometime in the future.
We'll say see you later. We're not saying we're going to actually see you in an hour. It could be a month.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a saying in Gulf Arabia that in Gulf Arabia we have IBM. And we all know that IBM is a big company, and I'm sure they have operations all throughout Gulf Arabia. But what we're talking about is cultural IBM. Inshallah, Bukra, and Mahalesh.
Okay.
Right. Inshallah means if you ask me, will the package arrive tomorrow?
Yeah.
I'll say, of course it will, Mr. Tom. Absolutely. For you, my dear friend, the package will arrive, I guarantee, inshallah, tomorrow. Well, I've just given myself a caveat that maybe it'll arrive tomorrow. Because if it is Allah's will, inshallah, then the package will arrive.
Sure.
I can do my best, and I will do my best. But if it doesn't arrive, don't come back to me and complain about it. Right? So there's that element of control or lack of control. I be bukra tomorrow. Right. Which means any day beyond the next day. And Mahalesh is, and if things don't work out, don't worry about it. It's all going to be okay anyway.
Right.
Sort of like the Indian idea or the Hindu idea that it's not over until it's over, and so therefore, if it still hasn't worked out yet, it's not over.
Right. Or until the fat lady sings.
Or until the fat lady sings, as we say.
Right. Well, you know what? We're running out of time. And
well, in which culture would that be true?
All cultures. We're running out. Oh, right now in the world, we're running out of time, my friend.
So are you saying we are at the end times?
I'm saying for this podcast, we are at the end of time. That's.
But we just spent an hour talking about the fact that can't ever be. It's all how you approach it.
Yes, it can. Watch me end the podcast.
But if I believe it's not the end, then it's not the end.
It's not the end.
No, by the way, I take that back. Can I take that back? Can I take that back?
Oh, you can't take it back. I'll
there.
never get that out of my head now. It's just burned in.
No, you're right. If it is the end, it's the end no matter what I believe.
That's true.
That's what I meant to say.
Is it, though? Is it? Regardless of the time, I believe you're still Dean Foster. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Great. Thanks for helping out.
In this timeline.
In this timeline, you're going to be Dean Foster, like it or not. And of course, Dean is the man with all of the answers to all of your questions.
As long as you give me all of the information.
Nice about it, or happy to answer your question at all.
He'll pick your emails apart.
And okay, and I'm Tom Peterson, regardless. And Torrin is our producer, and he's still here.
I'm still here.
He's still in the studio, and I think you're going to be around the studio for our next podcast too.
That's true.
That's the rumor.
That's what I hear.
If we tell you where we're recording it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll see. And now, oops, your culture
showing.
Yeah. That's the name of the show. I don't know if you'd heard it before.
But every time you say that, I kind of like double check. I kind of look to see
if it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it is, and
the fact that I don't think time is running, that we're running out of it, means it's showing.
Or not. Well, that's it. And on that note, smell ya. Just want to bother you one last time to say we're a brand new podcast here at Oops, Your Culture Showing, and we could really use your help by subscribing to the podcast. And not to mention that if you hung around this long and you liked what you heard, well, this makes it just easier for you to get the podcast. They'll pop up for you whenever they're released, so you can listen to them on your phone or your computer or however you listen to them. And it's easy to get, too. Just subscribe using iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. It really isn't hard, and we could really use your support. So, from all of us here at Oops, Your Culture Showing, thanks.